Point 5 looks at natural disruptions to ecosystems. They'll also talk about people disruptions to the environment or to ecosystems, since that comes up a lot in the year. So it's essential to know that natural disruptions to ecosystems have environmental consequences that may, for a given occurrence, be as great or greater than many human-made disruptions. A lot to say is that sometimes nature fails, and it's not our fault. It just happens. But that's not to say that human-made disruptions can't be as devastating, which is why I'm going to talk about those as well. Natural disruptions could be things like weather, severe floods, severe storms, droughts, long-term freezing, geological forces, such as with volcanoes or earthquakes, biological changes, for instance, insects or diseases, and of course fires. All these things can do a lot of damage to that environment. Human disruptions, we can categorize them with the mnemonic HIPCO. HIPCO stands for habitat destruction, which is the #1 cause of loss of biodiversity. That could come in the form of urbanization. So as we build our homes, we build our sidewalks, we build our buildings in cities. Maybe it's through mining or deforestation that comes at the expense of someone's habitat. And that habitat loss is, like I said, the #1 cause of loss of biodiversity, because if you don't have a home, you know, it's kind of hard for you to make your way in life. I stands for invasive species, which one we're really familiar with here in Florida is the kudzu. I'm sure you've all seen the giant blankets of kudzu vines that just take over entire forest. So they come in and they just ruin everything. Pollution, whether that's water pollution, air pollution, soil pollution, noise pollution, light pollution, pollution, you name it, there's a pollution for it. Population, or specifically population growth, because as we have more people, we need more resources, so we need more land, we need more water, we need more just everything. Of course, climate change, which is a result of our overuse of fossil fuels. And then overexploitation, for instance, with overfishing, overhunting. You have species like the dodo bird or passenger pigeon, organisms that have gone extinct because of that, but of course there's plenty more examples, but all of these result in loss of biodiversity. And we'll come back to that too, as well. When we look at Earth's history and we look at events, these processes that we look at could either be periodic, which means they occur at regular intervals, episodic, which is a series of loosely connected events, or completely random. As we look through Earth's history, we can find, and we'll talk more about this when we actually get to our climate change unit, we've found many reasons that the environment can experience climate change, or changing climate, I should say. As our orbits change, the Earth's tilt has changed. That affects the amount of solar radiation being received and the directness of that sunlight. There have been times where the solar energy has been, the amount of solar energy reaching Earth has been different. And of course, the greenhouse gases, like specifically carbon dioxide, also methane's a big one. This is the one, as we talk about climate change this year, and climate change you hear about, on a daily basis, it's because of this. We'll of course talk more about misconceptions surrounding climate change when we get to our climate change unit, but it's important to know that even if our climate has changed in the past, the climate change occurring right now is unprecedented. It's happening at a rate way faster than we've ever seen before, and it's because of the greenhouse gas emissions that humans produce. Anyways, moving on. Also with the changing climate, we've seen a back and forth of glacial periods, which has changed the sea level over time. All this, by the way, we're talking about this is because as the weather changes, as the climate changes, that changes the environment, that changes the species that will thrive at those time periods. So if it's, a glacial period, you're going to see organisms pop up more that have adapted to the cold versus interglacial and so on. Or the sea level, it's rising sea levels can wipe out habitats, cause flooding, and so certain organisms won't thrive in those years. So. The major environmental changes, as I was just saying, commonly result in large swaths of habitat changes, which is the #1 cause of loss of biodiversity. So that's why, it's important to look at these events to see how biodiversity has changed, to then see how our changes will ultimately impact, biodiversity in our lifetime. So like I was saying before, the habitat destruction, I won't really go over this as much, but it is the #1 cause of loss of biodiversity as we make room for crops and livestock and the growing human population. It's bad. It's super bad. And last one, which I feel is kind of obvious, wildlife engages in both short and long-term migration for a variety of reasons, including natural disasters. So sometimes they might fly away because, the conditions aren't so great right now. It might be periodic, so like in every year they migrate at the same time. But it also might be a new migration. So let's say, the weather has changed in a certain area, and normally they migrate to someplace else, but they stick around because, it's actually kind of warm here. Well then, that throws off the food that's available. It throws off some sort of balance. Then also maybe like the prey that they would hunt in the places they migrate to might increase. So we see a change in the ecosystem relationships. And this is something that we look at more when we talk about climate change. This is all kind of leading up to that. All right, so that's it. So now go ahead and explain how natural disruptions, both short and long term, can impact an ecosystem.